here today to talk to you about the body and the somatic body. In fact, the title of today's talk is Awakening the Somatic Body. But before we talk about the somatic body, we want to kind of make one distinction. And the distinction is that there is the body, and then there are ideas about the body. And the ideas about the body might not necessarily be friendly to the body. So, this first distinction. And the ideas of the body, of course, are supported by various schools of idealisms or various types of idealisms. And these idealisms can vary from the moral body, which is morally ideal, and going all the way down to the cosmetic body. So, in between everything, things like the productive body, the performative body, the gendered body, the one that performs the received duties, and which are very normative. So that's one. But on the other hand, there are also these schools of what, for lack of a better word, could be called the materialists that rely upon the materiality of the body. And I'm going to be talking about the body as it's seen and viewed within these schools that rely upon, that have confidence in the body. And what do they have confidence in? They have the confidence in the body of its, first of all, confidence in the intelligence of the body, in the sensitivity of the body. And to realize that the body, as opposed to the idealists who think that the body is morally irresponsible, that the body is the one that will waylay you, I would counter that by the argument that the body is actually intuitive, sensitive, and morally supremely responsible. Not just responsible, supremely, because at the very lowest, at the subtlest level, the body, the instinct of the body is to self-preserve, and self-preserve not only physically but even self-preserve spiritually, even ethically, responsibly. So what we're talking about here is the body, which can rely upon itself, its intelligence, its sensitivity, and the body which is made to feel as though on its own it is incomplete, it's unreliable, it's irresponsible, and it is immoral. Now, before the body comes, and so what is the somatic body? The somatics is the body, the sensory body from the inside, as how the body feels, responds, corresponds, or seeks correspondences to its sensory prompts that are part and parcel of its living being, its living organism, which is a very, very sensitive organism. So the body, listening to the body from the inside, as opposed to dictating upon the body from the outside, as per external ideals, is somatics. So the body that relies on itself and listens to the prompts from within, as opposed to fulfills aesthetic norms, moral norms, ethical norms from the outside. Now, what is it that makes, and okay, before I go any further, I want to say that the subcontinent, and perhaps this is the uniqueness of our subcontinent, within our subcontinent, we to this day have retained a culture of the body. We do have a very strong and sound culture of the body, for the body, by the body, and a body within which the ideal remains within the body. So let me just explain this, because for the idealists, the ideal of the body is external. But if we are looking at the body itself is enlightened. It doesn't need to go out. Sensitivity itself is enlightening. So it's like honing that sensitivity, distilling the materiality to a point of sensitivity, percolating that sensitivity to for the body to yield knowledge, for the body to yield insights, for the body to yield enlightenment. So the ideal is within the body. And what is it that has historically kind of made the idea of the body kind of take over the body? And I would propose that historically, over the last, at least the last 2 centuries mainly, since the beginning, middle of the 19th century, the embodied practices of, say, yoga and tantra and even dance, which to some degree rely upon or adhere to the materialist body-centric practices, body-relying practices, have been slowly overtaken and swallowed by the idealist schools. And what happens is that the text becomes predominant in the 19th century, as per the Protestant tenet, actually, which says, let's adhere practice to the original texts. Let's go back to the original texts. So it's the 19th century phenomena that suddenly yoga is aligned to the Yoga Sutras, or in the early 20th century, dance is aligned to the Natya Shastra. So suddenly text becomes predominant in a lived, embodied practice. At the cost of lived histories, at the cost of lived traditions, and at the cost of the lives of these practitioners who have over the centuries carried forward these practices. So the predominance of the text, as though the text is the last word. Then comes the predominance of form, as though the external form, be it the asana, or be it an adavu, or be it a shape, or be it a mudra, as though the external form is something to be aspired for, and the perfecting of the external form, as opposed to how the body kind of melts into that form. So the measurement of the form becomes externalized, imposed from the outside, as opposed to the body intuiting and melting and molding it to it from the inside. And so forth and so forth. And then, of course, this whole idea of moral correctness, that, the body has to be morally correct. We can't accommodate amoral or immoral bodies. And traditionally, what we have seen, the hereditary dancers, or the Hatha yogis, were, by the 19th century, considered to be either immoral or amoral, and thus not acceptable within these schools. So what a very, very big change that happens is that an embodied practice like yoga is brought under the umbrella of a doctrine, an idealist doctrine, that of, say, Vedanta. And there is no place of the body within Vedanta. In fact, Vedanta is body dismissive. For Vedanta, body is the obstacle in the path of enlightenment. So it is. So what happens to a body relying practice when it comes under the umbrella of a body dismissive doctrine? That means, what happens to the body when it comes under the idea of the body in the path of enlightenment? So it is. So what happens to a body relying practice when it comes under the umbrella of a body dismissive doctrine? That means, what happens to the body when it comes under the idea of the body, an idea which doesn't have confidence in the body? And that's what we are really struggling with today. And the somatic practice that I'm trying to engage with and trying to propose is a response to that. So somatics would be relying upon the body. And I'm not saying when I'm that the form or the word are not important. They are very, very important. I'm not saying that pedagogy is not important. It's very important. I'm not saying that discipline is not important. It's very important. But what we need to rely upon, what we need to kind of go into, is that within the word and the body, there is always a gap. The word cannot fully express how I feel. How the body feels, the word can approximate, but there still remains a gap. And the embodied practice actually flourishes within that very gap, that very excess, which the word cannot express, the word cannot capture. the embodied practice, especially of dance, of abhinaya, it actually flourishes in that impossibility of expression. And yet, perhaps the only way it can be expressed is through the nuance of texture, through the nuance of movement, through the nuance of voice texture, through tone, but not through a word. But on the other hand, it is exactly the word that provokes it, that stimulates it, that contains it, that gives it a context. So I'm not saying that word is not important. Word is very important, but the gap between the word and the experience is more important. And that is the place of poetry, that is the place of nuance, that is the place of subtlety, that is the place where the sukshma, subtle experience resides. And that is the place of spirituality. Spirituality is not literal. The self cannot express itself literally. The self cannot express itself in a very linear, direct fashion. The expression of the self is indirect. And it can only be expressed through abstractions. And it can only be expressed by relying upon the sensory experiences happening in the moment and trying to give it form, trying that struggle of the body, which is trying to approximate its experience with a gesture, with a feeling, with a texture, is actually the living moment. The living moment of, say, art or in asana. So I'm talking about abhinaya at this point, that abhinaya is not a learned behavior. Abhinaya is delivering yourself in the moment and then seeing how the body will reveal, will divulge that words cannot express. So the body kind of exceeds the word, and the body must be allowed to exceed the word. The body must have the social and the social sanction to exceed the word. And that social sanction has been taken away by the correctness of form, by the imposition of text, which is in itself limited, and this whole moral correctness. Similarly, when it comes to asana, asana is not something that is kind of forced from the outside, a shape that is correct from the outside and must be adhered to and must be reached no matter what. आसना is something that you occupy. आसना धारण किया जाता है. आसना किया नहीं जाता, आसन धारण किया जाता है. और जब आसना आप धारण करते हैं तो आप उसको मतलब it's something that you wear upon the body. You kind of it's like getting into a new suit, so to speak, and you have to kind of really sense it from the inside. You have to sense its form from the inside, and of course you want to be comfortable in that new suit. And what determines that comfort is your sensitivity. That may I be allowed to remain comfortable and sensory awake and sensitive in this shape. And may I remain undisturbed for as long time so that I may be sensorially absorbed, not only in the shape, but whatever the shape is corresponding to. Again, I want to end by saying two things. That the body is not alone. And within the new form, within the new pedagogies that have been imposed upon us, the body has been rendered absolutely in solitude. The body is not alone. The body is in correspondence to something at any given point. There is something that I relate to even now as I sit. And that something is not God. I'm not saying something spiritual. There is something, and I make my shape in correspondence to that. And the second point that I want to make, after saying that the body is not alone, the second is that practice is not about doing. We have become victims of doing, as though doing is it, as though work is worship. Aram haram hai, no rest for the wicked. Practice till you become perfect, all those things. And I want to very boldly say that practice is not about doing. Practice is not even about perfecting. This is an imposition. Perfectionism is a modern tyranny. We have been tyrannized by form, by perfection. Practice is about seeing. It's not about doing. It is about seeing the sensory engagement of the body with the doing, which is a very tentative, tenacious doing. You know, when they say in yoga, that the practice is, it's abhyas vairagya. So there is vairagyam in it and there is abhyas in it. There's ambition in it, but there's also a kind of a submission, a kind of a detachment to it. So it's very tenacious, but it's also very tentative. And it's like the just right moment within the practice. So what are we seeing? So when I'm practicing, what am I seeing? I'm not seeing, am I looking all right? I'm not looking at myself in the mirror to fulfill a form from the outside. That is crude, that is vulgar, that is violent. But I'm seeing how my body is responding sensorially to the prompts. And how am I awakening to this new possibility of being, to this new possibility of shape. And I can only experience that sensorially from the inside, from a place of autonomy and freedom where I am the maker of rules and I am the breaker of rules. There is no external imposition, because what I'm unearthing is the depth of sensitivity. I'm not trying to unearth God out of me, something that is external, that is superior than me. No, there is no sense of hierarchy of superiority and inferiority. I am superior enough. I am that already. And it's not an idea. It's a sensation. It's a frequency. And it's a frequency that I can only and only and only arrive at sensorially. There is no amount of ideation. There is no amount of intellectual engagement that will take me to that frequency. And I do it by sensing it and simultaneously seeing it. And by knowing that I'm not alone, that I am in engagement with something, and that thing already is part of that frequency. So I guess with that, I would like to end to say that the body is not alone and practice is not about doing. Please stop doing. It's about seeing. Tada drishtu swarupe avasthanam. That's the Yoga Sutras.